Walk into a terraced kitchen in 1957 and the first thing that hit you was warmth, not central heating, the oven. Already on, the smell of something baking wrapped around the room like a second coat of paint. Flour on the table, a jam jar with the lid off, your nan at the counter with her sleeves rolled up and no recipe in sight. She never needed one. The Ministry of Food put one of these on the front page of their ration leaflets, the most reprinted recipe of the entire war. And number 7 should stop you. Your nan was producing confectionery indistinguishable from boxed sweets at 10 times the price, using nothing but icing sugar and a thimble. These were not old women repeating simple recipes. These were bakers who carried every ratio, every texture, and every timing in their hands. Let's count down 15 bakes your nan made without a recipe. Number 15, rock cakes. Your nan grabbed a handful of flour, rubbed in a lump of margarine with her fingertips until it looked like breadcrumbs, threw in a fistful of currants and a spoonful of sugar, cracked an egg, and barely mixed it. That was the secret, barely mixing it. She dropped rough lumps onto a greased baking tray with a fork, shoved them in a hot oven, and 20 minutes later pulled out a dozen craggy, golden, imperfect things that tasted better than anything in a cellophane wrapper. The Women's Institute Handbook of 1953 listed rock cakes as the ideal beginner's recipe precisely because they could not go wrong. Overmix them and you'd still eat them. Undermix them and they were better for it. The whole kitchen smelled of warm butter and dried fruit, and you could hear the tray being set down on the wooden board from the other end of the house. We now paid £2.50 for a single scone in a chain coffee shop and consider it a treat. Your nan made a dozen for 4p and never once called it baking. Number 14, jam tarts. Leftover pastry, and there was always leftover pastry, pressed into a patty tin with small thumbs and careful fingers. A teaspoon of jam dropped into each hollow, strawberry usually, or black currant if the bushes in the garden had been generous, into the oven for 12 minutes, and out came 24 tiny jeweled things with crimped edges and bubbling centers. The Ministry of Food printed this exact recipe on ration leaflets during the war because it used almost nothing. A few ounces of flour, a scrape of fat, and whatever jam was in the cupboard. It was their most reprinted recipe, distributed to millions of households between 1940 and 1954. Children learned to crimp pastry edges before they could spell their own surnames, and the sweet hot smell of baked jam filled the kitchen for hours afterwards. Today we buy pre-rolled pastry sheets because we have forgotten what our own hands can do with flour and water. Your nan never forgot. She just called it Tuesday. Number 13, Welsh cakes on the griddle. No oven needed at all. Your nan, or your mam if you grew up west of the Severn, mixed flour, butter, sugar, and currants into a stiff dough, rolled it out on a floured board, cut rounds with a glass, and laid them straight onto a dry bake stone, or the flat hot plate of the range, 3 minutes each side. That was it. A 1948 survey of housewives in the Glamorgan valleys found that Welsh cakes were made at least twice a week in over 70% of households, more often than any other baked item, including bread. They came off the griddle with a dusting of caster sugar, warm enough to melt it slightly, and you ate them standing up in the kitchen because sitting down would have wasted time. We now spend £30 on a cast iron skillet and watch a tutorial before we dare put it on the hob. In Swansea, a 9-year-old could make these unsupervised before school. Number 12, fairy cakes in paper cases. 1 egg, 2 ounces of butter, 2 ounces of sugar, 2 ounces of self-raising flour. Your nan could recite that ratio in her sleep, and she probably did. She creamed the butter and sugar with the back of a wooden spoon, no whisk, no machine, folded in the flour, spooned the mix into paper cases, and had them in the oven before the kettle boiled. 20 minutes later, a wire rack held a dozen tiny sponges, some topped with a thin coat of water icing mixed with whatever color was in the cupboard, most just dusted with sugar. In 1958, the average cost of a child's birthday tea for 12 came to under 3 shillings and 6p, and fairy cakes were the centerpiece. The feel of peeling that paper case away from the sponge, the slight resistance, and then the clean release. If you grew up in Britain, your fingers remember it. We now order cupcakes online for £4 each, and they arrive in a box designed for jewelry. Same cake, 40 times the price, none of the memory. If the smell of any of those just came back to you, hit subscribe, because the ones further down this list needed even fewer ingredients and even more skill. Number 11, bread pudding from a stale loaf. Your nan tore the stale bread into chunks and dropped them into a bowl of cold tea to soak. When they were soft, an hour, sometimes overnight, She squeezed every drop of liquid out with her bare hands, then worked in sweet brown sugar, mixed spice, and a handful of dried fruit. The whole lot pressed into a greased tin and baked low and slow until the top cracked and darkened. A 1944 Ministry of Food pamphlet called bread pudding the single most economical use of stale bread in the British kitchen, and estimated that the average household wasted over 2 pounds of bread per week, enough for 3 puddings. The slab came out dense and dark, and so rich with spice you could taste it cold from the tin for days, each slice heavier than it looked. We now throw away nearly 1 million tons of bread a year in this country and call it unavoidable waste. Your nan called it ingredients. Notice something. 5 items in and the same ingredients keep appearing. Flour, sugar, butter, eggs, dried fruit, a tin of syrup or treacle. Your nan did not have a well-stocked pantry. She had 6 staples and an imagination. The variety was never in what she bought. It was in what she knew. The next 5 on this list go even further. Some of them skip the oven entirely. Number 10, coconut ice set in the pantry. No heat whatsoever. Your nan mixed condensed milk, icing sugar, and desiccated coconut in a bowl, pressed half the mixture into a lined tin, dyed the other half pink with a single drop of cochineal, and pressed that on top. The tin went into the pantry overnight, and by morning it had set firm enough to slice into bars. She wrapped each one in a strip of greaseproof paper, and they looked like something from a confectioner's window. A 1952 edition of the Good Housekeeping Institute's guide listed coconut ice as the most popular homemade sweet at church fetes and school fundraisers across England and Wales. The pink and white layers sitting side by side in a biscuit tin. If you opened your nan's cupboard at Christmas, you can still see them. We now buy coconut bars marketed as raw, organic, and plant-based for £2 each. Your nan made 40 of them for a shilling and never once mentioned the ingredients. Number 9, ginger biscuits that snap. Black treacle, flour, ground ginger, a pinch of bicarbonate of soda, and just enough butter to hold it together. Your nan rolled the dough thin on a floured surface, thinner than you'd think, cut rounds with a cutter or the rim of a glass, and slid the tray into a moderate oven. She did not set a timer, she listened. When the bubbling noise from the oven went quiet, they were done. That was her method. Sound, not sight. She could tell you they were ready from the next room. The National Food Survey of 1955 recorded that ginger biscuits were the 3rd most commonly home-baked item in British households, behind only scones and Victoria sponge. A bag of oats cost 4p, and a tin of black treacle lasted a month. The whole house smelled of bonfire night for hours. A deep, treacly warmth that sank into the curtains and stayed there until morning. Today we follow exact temperatures and precise timings from a screen and still manage to burn them. Your nan used her ears and got them right every time. Number 8, flapjacks from the syrup tin. Oats, golden syrup, butter. 3 ingredients. Your nan melted the butter and syrup together in a saucepan, stirred through the oats until everything was coated, pressed the lot into a shallow tin with the back of a spoon, and baked it until the edges darkened and turned chewy. 1 tin, cut into 16 bars, lasted the whole week, in coat pockets, school bags, lunch boxes, and wrapped in greaseproof paper at the bottom of a handbag. The Ministry of Food's wartime nutrition campaign recommended oats as the single most important civilian fuel during rationing. And flapjacks were the delivery system, cheap, dense, and nearly indestructible. Peeling a warm bar away from the greaseproof paper lining, feeling it bend slightly before it held its shape, that was a texture you learned to trust before you knew what calories were. We now buy individually wrapped granola bars with 23 listed ingredients and a shelf life of 18 months. Your nan's flapjacks had 3 ingredients and a shelf life of about 2 days, because they were always gone by then. Number 7, peppermint creams by hand. This is the one that should stop you. Your nan was making artisan confectionery on the kitchen table decades before the word artisan meant anything outside a French bakery. Icing sugar, the white of 1 egg, and a drop of peppermint essence, kneaded together on a clean surface until the paste was smooth, rolled out flat, and stamped into neat rounds with a thimble. No cooking, no special molds, no equipment at all beyond 2 clean hands and a steady touch. She laid them on greaseproof paper to dry, and by the next morning they had a shell that cracked to reveal a soft, cool center, indistinguishable from boxed confectionery costing 10 times more. A 1961 study by the University of Essex on household food production found that homemade sweets, peppermint creams, coconut ice, toffee, accounted for a significant proportion of confectionery consumed in lower-income homes. We now call this sort of thing small batch and charge £5 a box at a farmer's market. Your nan gave them away at Christmas in a paper bag and thought nothing of it. Here is what becomes clear the further down this list we go. The fewer ingredients your nan used, the more everything depended on her hands. Ratios she never wrote down, Textures she judged by touch. Temperatures she knew by sound or smell. None of this was instinct. It was knowledge, earned over decades, and the next 5 items prove it beyond any doubt. Number 6. Treacle toffee for bonfire night. Black treacle, sugar, a knob of butter, and a splash of vinegar. All of it into a heavy-bottomed pan over a steady heat. Your nan stirred with a wooden spoon and watched the color change. She did not own a sugar thermometer. She tested it the old way, dropping a bead of hot toffee into a cup of cold water and waiting to see if it cracked clean between her fingers. If it bent, it was not ready. If it snapped, she pulled the pan off the heat and poured the lot onto a greased marble slab. Scored with a knife before it set, then snapped into jagged shards that stuck your teeth together. Oral histories collected by the Imperial War Museum record treacle toffee as the most commonly made bonfire night sweet across northern England from the 1930s through the 1970s. The sound of it cracking in a cold kitchen on the 5th of November. That was the taste of autumn. We now buy bags of pre-wrapped toffees from a supermarket and tear them open without a thought. Your nan made hers by ear, by eye, and by the crack between her fingertips. Number 5. Cornflake cakes in paper cases. Melted chocolate, or treacle if chocolate was scarce, stirred through a bowl of cornflakes, spooned into paper cases, and set on the windowsill to firm up. That is the entire recipe. No oven, no technique, no risk of failure. This was the first thing most British children ever made in a kitchen, supervised or not. A 5-year-old standing on a chair, wooden spoon in both hands, face serious with concentration. A 1966 survey by the National Dairy Council found that cornflake cakes were the single most commonly made item in primary school cookery lessons across England and Wales. The sight of them lined up on a plate, slightly uneven, chocolate still shiny. Your nan praised every one of them as though they had come from a patisserie. We now buy children elaborate baking kits with printed instructions and pre-measured sachets, as though making something in the kitchen requires professional guidance. It never did. It required cornflakes, chocolate, and someone who let you make a mess. Number 4. Seed cake with caraway. A plain Madeira batter. Butter, sugar, eggs, flour. With a handful of caraway seeds folded through at the last moment. Nothing else. Your nan creamed the butter by hand until her wrist ached. Beat in the eggs one at a time, sifted the flour, and stirred those seeds through at the very end so they stayed whole and scattered evenly through the crumb. This was a cake so old-fashioned it had already fallen out of favor by the 1960s, and most people under 50 have never tasted one. The Good Food Guide of 1951 described seed cake as a drawing room staple that had survived virtually unchanged since the 18th century when it was served with sherry after church. That strange, warm, almost aniseed bite, your great-grandmother would have recognized it instantly, and her grandmother before that. We now chase novelty so relentlessly that a flavor lasting 300 years gets called old-fashioned and abandoned. This wasn't an outdated recipe. This was a direct line to a Britain already disappearing from living memory. Number 3. Lardy cake from bread dough. Your nan took a piece of risen bread dough, pulled off from the weekly batch, rolled it out into a rough rectangle, spread it with lard, scattered sugar and dried fruit across the surface, then folded it in 3 like a letter. She turned it, rolled it again, spread more lard, more sugar, more fruit, and folded it once more. 2 or 3 rounds of this, then into a tin and into the oven. What came out had a bottom crust caramelized so dark and sticky it peeled away from the tin like toffee. The Women's Institute archives record lardy cake as a regional speciality of Wiltshire, Oxfordshire, and Gloucestershire, rarely seen north of Birmingham and almost never sold commercially. Pulling a warm slice away from the slab and feeling the weight of it, dense and sweet with rendered fat, there was nothing else like it. We now pay £4 for a single pastry and call it laminated dough as though the technique were invented in Paris. Your nan was laminating bread dough with pig fat and patience long before anyone gave it a French name. Number 2. Scones cut with a glass, flour, a knob of butter, a splash of milk, a pinch of salt. Rubbed together in the bowl in under a minute, turned out onto a floured board and patted, never rolled, always patted, to about an inch thick, cut with an upturned glass because nobody in a terraced house in Salford owned a proper pastry cutter. Your nan twisted the glass as she pressed to get a clean edge, spaced the rounds on a floured tray, and had them in the oven before the tea was brewed. 12 minutes later, split, not sliced, and eaten within the hour because a scone that sat around was a scone not worth eating. District nurses in the 1950s recommended cited scones as one of the best quick sources of energy for new mothers. Fast to make, easy to eat with one hand, and requiring almost nothing from the store cupboard. The sound of a hot scone being torn open, the soft give, and then the clean break. You heard it before you tasted it? We now debate the pronunciation and argue about cream first or jam first. Your nan just made every week without thinking, and they rose every single time. Number 1, Victoria sponge from Feel Alone. 4 ingredients in equal weight: butter, sugar, eggs, flour. Your nan never once reached for the scales. She cracked the eggs into one hand, hefted the butter in the other, and matched everything by feel. She creamed the butter and sugar with a wooden spoon until her arm burned, beat the eggs in one at a time, folded the flour with a metal spoon, using a figure-of-8 motion she had learned from her own mother and never thought to explain. 2 greased tins, a moderate oven, 15 minutes. She knew they were done by the way the top sprang back under her fingertip, a smear of jam between the layers, a dusting of caster sugar on top. No icing, no decoration, no nonsense. The National Food Survey of 1957 recorded Victoria's sponge as the single most commonly baked cake in British homes, appearing in over 60% of households that reported any home baking at all. The warmth of a just-turned-out sponge on a wire rack, the kitchen still sweet with vanilla and butter. Every nan in Britain carried this recipe not in her head, but in her hands. That is not nostalgia. That is 10,000 hours of practice, passed down through kitchens, disguised as instinct. Try one of these this week. Rock cakes, flapjacks, a Victoria sponge from Feel Alone. Tell us in the comments which one your nan made best. The recipes were never written down because they were never meant to be read. They were meant to be handed over.